Hello and welcome to the final episode of Rugby World Cup Weekly, our flagship weekly review show from France 2023. It was gut-wrenching, it was enthralling, it was memorable, it was historic. But the 2023 Rugby World Cup finally came to an end last night as South Africa became the men's game's first four-time victors. Handré Pollard's four first-half penalties was enough to see the Rainbow Nation to victory in the Stade de France. Joining me tonight to look back on the tense tussle and the tournament at large is the jubilant Riaan Lowe and the knowledgeable Hugh Griffin and David Cordial. So welcome on, lads.
How's it?
Evening.
I guess.
See, I've got my Springbok socks on. Here we go. I'm very happy.
For those in podcast form, Riaan has South Africa jersey, South Africa socks, and has
I've got
made
a South
a nice
African
little
mug here as well.
a South African mug, and he's put four logos, four cup trophies as his header name there on Zoom as well. So if you didn't know, four-time champion South Africa. And I'll start with yourself, Riaan. Firstly, congrats to our URC friends and brothers. How is yourself and the nation feeling today?
I can't speak for everyone. Myself, exhausted, slightly hungover, and relieved, very relieved. There was this just feeling, this pit in my stomach of we might not be world champions by the end of this weekend, and I wasn't ready to deal with that. I don't have to deal with it for another 4 years. So very, very relieved. And I'm pretty sure everyone around me in my neighborhood is also hungover because when that final whistle went last night, I live in a little valley and it exploded. It was firecrackers, it was music, cars hooting, people shouting. This whole town just exploded, the entirety of Joburg. I went around Joburg yesterday and there were roadblocks, concerts, everything was set up for last night. And it was a huge, huge jaw. Very, very good time.
It's one thing about a South African win, and Sia Khaleesi kind of made reference to it, is it does kind of inspire a nation, and you have to stand back every once in a while. Maybe not if you're a New Zealand fan today, but you do have to stand back every once in a while and realize these things are good for the sport. It's good for when we try to check the pulse on how fans receive these things. And Hugh, the other side of it is New Zealand did put up a great fight. It made for a really intense final, but we have to talk about the game itself. Do you think the better team won, not just the better team last night, but the better team across the tournament?
It's a great question. Obviously, both teams lost a pool match against what you might say were the top seeds in their pool. So obviously, All Blacks lost to France and Box lost to Ireland just. Did the better team win it? I don't want to be one of those guys who just comes on and just reads the stats aloud and that counts as analysis, because it doesn't. But if you do look at the stats, New Zealand had the better of it in a lot of them. So whether it's line outs, meters made, post contact meters made, line breaks, or anything like that, the All Blacks were top, and I think the All Blacks did more with the ball in the game, despite being down to 14 men. And you have to remember that the All Blacks scored a try, the Box didn't, and across the whole World Cup, I think the All Blacks conceded 2 tries against France, 2 against Italy, and 3 against Ireland, and that was it in terms of tries conceded. I think if you go back to the beginning of the Rugby Championship as well, I think the All Blacks went something like 3 halves of rugby without conceding a try. So did the best team win it? Scoreline says yes. I think no one could have complained, though, if one of those 2 last kicks from the All Blacks, whether it was the conversion or Geordie Barrett's kick, if one of those had gone over, you couldn't call it a robbery. So I think both teams were well worth the win. It's very rare, really, even whether it's club rugby or test match rugby, it's very rare that you get evenly matched teams. There's a lot of mismatches in the game of rugby union. So to find 2 that were pretty much each other's equals, it is a rare treat, really.
And as you said, it was kick of a ball, bounce of a ball, and that's what makes the difference. And David, you were another who tipped New Zealand this week. And that's the thing. It was literally a kick of a ball, a bounce of a ball. But as well as that, it is testament to the players, the coaches, the officials, that a 12-11 game had this incredible energy and this incredible tension to it.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I went out with some friends to watch it, and there was a strong South African contingent there. So it was a lot of fun, but it was as tight as it could be. There were several moments in that game where it seemed it could tip, towards one team or the other. I had said previously I thought that South Africa would lose out to France in the quarters, but they won there, also by an incredibly narrow margin. But this is the third game in a row that South Africa won by a single point. To do it once, you're lucky. To do it twice, you're really lucky. But if you do it 3 times, you have to just take off your hat and say, this is a team that knows how to win. And they can do it by scoring tries like they did against France. They can do it by taking their points when they need you against England or the All Blacks. So I think, if the question comes up, is it the best team that won? I think it was the team that, if you look at their body of work, it should be less of a surprise to some of us that they did win, because this is just a team that knows how to get the job done.
That's exactly what it is. And that was going to be my next question for Riaan anyway, because I felt like this is going to be something we talk about. Like South Africa, not just under Erasmus and Nienaber, but for years, they just know how to get the job done. David referenced 3 straight 1-point wins. Like, yeah, luck is a factor when it's a 1-score game, but they just know how to grind it out when they need to.
Yeah, it's a thing that we love about our rugby, is those real hard tests. The harder the test, the harder we go at it. So if you keep putting up a wall, we will keep running hard at it to try and get through it. It's just the nature of the rugby we play. But yes, we can say that the best team win. Are we lucky? Aren't we lucky? If we replay the World Cup now, it's very possible that New Zealand could win it. It's very possible that France could win it. It's very possible that Ireland could win it. It's just luck is a good factor. And I think maybe in this team, because they've been there before, they've done it before, we've got so much experience. I think those little 1%ers is what just pushed us over the edge this time. So a lot of us didn't think we'd get this far because France are so good, because Ireland are so good. We have been matching New Zealand lately. We're not as scared of them anymore. And I'm just so happy. The last 3 weeks I've gotten so old. I can't take this anymore. Our nation, we all wear, Apple Watches and stuff. We have a very big medical aid company in our country, and they say for like the last 3 weeks they've been tracking the heart rate of the country, and it's been like dangerous levels for a lot of people. They've been telling people, calm down countrywide, please just relax. It's terrible what you're putting yourself through. So I'm just happy it's over. And yeah, I'm just glad we were managed to use our experience, our grit, and our love of just that hard match to win. So happy.
Well, you can use the word happy or synonyms of it as much as you want tonight. That's perfectly allowed. And I did make the comment, like, even I was stressed watching it. Granted, because of the Munster connection, it wasn't a full neutral party, but like, if that was Ireland in a 12-11 World Cup final in the last kick of the game, I don't know how I'd have managed. Never mind, all of yourselves. And Hugh, like, it was, yes, it was tight and went down to the last minute, but that wasn't the moment we'll remember. Unfortunately, it was a red card to Sam Cane. And like, barring some league enthusiasts, it feels like we all agree it was red. Even if you feel for Cane on a personal level, it's hard to say it wasn't a red card.
Absolutely not. He's got no excuse, because it's not like he was stood on his heels and Creel's run into him. He's gone for him and he's not bent. It would have, he had tons of space. He could have bent at the hips and put a legal shot, and probably put in a fantastic legal shot on him, but he's chosen not to. Obviously, someone pointed out to me before that he also got yellow carded in the Super Rugby final, just gone this year as well, in which the Chiefs lost that game as well. I just wonder whether this is a legacy of the Super Rugby 20-minute red card, where it's just not changing the behaviours, and it gives the impression that in the Southern Hemisphere, well, for the Super Rugby teams anyway, the emphasis on the change of behaviour hasn't been as strong as it has been up here. So yeah, no argument for me that it was a red. like I said, he had every opportunity to make a legal hit. And I think just generally on Wayne Barnes, if we're going to talk about Wayne Barnes, I've seen some people on Twitter talking about he had a bad game. I had no problem with Wayne Barnes' performance or any of his decisions in the match, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. David, I might bring you in on that one. We all felt it was red card. I'm sure, you're usually of the same mind of me about these 20-minute red cards and high tackles being red cards. It did feel like it was the correct call, and as well as that, despite what some people say, certainly didn't ruin the game either, or change shape of it to that great of a degree.
No, it didn't. I think it was, as you said yourself, you have to feel for Kane to be in a situation like that. It's just gutting, particularly as the captain. I suppose the flip side of that is that the reason that we're trying to take hits like that out of the game is because of the incredible negative effect they can have on the tackled player. If you flipped it for a second and looked at another player who missed out on a significant amount of the World Cup final, that would be Bongi Mbonambi, and that was through absolutely no fault of his own. Now, I know it was Shannon Brazil who was penalised for that, and it eventually ended up just being yellow, but the reason we want to take tackles like Kane's out of the game, the reason we want to penalise people like Frizzell for what he did is because, yes, it is tough to miss out on a full match as the captain, but if you're missing, I would much prefer the person to miss out to be the person who's putting the dangerous hits like that, rather than the player who is the innocent player on the other side. So while I feel for Kane, I definitely thought it was the right decision, and I think people have done breakdowns about the points differential when it comes to red cards. I've just noticed anecdotally that there obviously is the dip that you suddenly have to go 14 against 15 for a lot of the game. There were subsequent yellow cards to Colby afterwards, so it did bounce for a time. But I've also noticed then that teams can get almost like a kick up the ass from a red card, especially for in the minutes immediately following it. You want to make sure that it doesn't impact the game. So I think on balance, the referee made the right decision, and I definitely don't think it ruined the game.
Absolutely. I think it was friend of the pod, Francisco Isaac, who threw out the comment about red cards ruin games, and people did not realize it was complete sarcasm.
I saw that.
Because it was so clearly sarcasm from him. And it's true. It's a lot of the time games with red cards are more entertaining. Sometimes it's because it's the better team sometimes get red carded and it is leveler, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it is, just two tight teams, and even with one man less doesn't make a difference. And I'll come back to you, David, because one man that we should talk about is the other man wearing number 7. I think genuinely there might have been 3 Peter Steph-Toys on the pitch last night, because he was everywhere. He was hitting everything. I think some of the tackles he made, he'd have knocked the Eiffel Tower. That's how good he was. What a performance from the flanker.
He was like a force of nature. I mean, there were so many occasions over the course of that game where it looked like New Zealand were about to generate go forward ball, and the ball carrier would just be crumpled by Steph-Toys just flying out of the line. I in particular noticed, and I'm like, this is not uncommon for a flanker to pick this guy as a target, but he seemed to particularly have Richie Mwanga's number, and he was just shutting him down every chance he get. And I think in a game like that, particularly with a team like the All Blacks, who are very fond of throwing the ball around, to have a player like Steph-Toys who can put in these massive completely legal hits.
Legal, bent over. Yeah,
exactly. When someone who can put in hits of that strength and do it legally, you really lose all excuses on the side of the players who don't. I think his targeting of Mwanga and his ability to shut down so much of that go forward ball really crippled New Zealand's attempts to try and generate the kind of passing phases that they like to. So, yeah, I thought he was brilliant, and it's no surprise that it comes from someone like him. He's a former World Player of the Year, but I think in particular in games like this, it's when difference makers like him stand up. That's what you need to give a team an edge in a game that is decided by a single point. So yeah, I thought he was just incredible.
2 line breaks.
Completely agree.
Yeah, not to mention.
Yeah, went down the sideline. Yeah,
top line breaks in the game. 2. No one else got.
He went after Geordie Barrett as well, which is something I thought the box would do, because Mwanga doesn't have as long a clearing kick. His clearing kicks are sometimes only about 30 meters, and Geordie is usually the guy they use to get the long ball. So it made sense that they would send him after either of those two to try and stop that long clearance kick. And it trapped New Zealand in their half for long periods of time because they just did not have the boot to get out of their half, which is something I can go back to the Ireland game. You could very easily just get it too low and he could exit. But to have us shut down Geordie just was such a good way of staying in their half and keeping the pressure on. So no, Pieter-Steph du Toit, still a legend. He has one good game every 4 years, and it just happens to be the most important one.
There's that side of it as well, I suppose. And as well, Geordie Barrett didn't have his best game in Twickenham against South Africa, and they obviously seen something in that as well as the clearing kicks. But maybe you felt like sometimes he was taking an extra second on the ball. It could have been something as simple as that as well. But granted, if you have even Etzebeth or Pieter-Steph du Toit chasing you down, you might take that extra second to make sure your body is in a safe position, because otherwise you're going to get absolutely smashed. Riaan, there was other standout players as well. So is there anyone that you want to bring up?
Deon Fourie. I mean, that is insane. To come onto the pitch as a makeshift hook. I thought when we lost Marks, our World Cup was done. I thought that was it. To have a man who is almost as old as I am, come back from years of playing in France, going through who knows what kind of damage over there, come back very low key, join the Stormers. All of a sudden, you can't ignore him. Plays for the Boks, and then captain South Africa in the final for the final 20 minutes, playing hooker, which he hasn't played for 10 years. That is, for me, legendary. That is like a cricketer playing with a broken hand, or a tennis player with a cramping calf muscle or something. That is going to go down for me as one of the best performances ever.
I don't think anyone can really have any real beef with that. I understand there will be people here who are like, well, the lineup didn't go well, but picking Deon Fourie as your sub hooker, you are kind of saying it's not all about the lineup. Because if it was, they'd have called up someone else, maybe Johan Grobler at the Bulls or someone of that ilk.
But New Zealand's lineout was also struggling. I think it was maybe I don't know if it's a weather issue or something, but both lineout, there was a few losses and steals. So yes, I think it would have been better had Bongi stayed on, but both sides did struggle, I think, in that area.
And Fourie played like an extra back row, and that's essentially what he is. You know, there's that as well. Hugh, have you anyone to add to the list? We have Pieter-Steph du Toit, we have Deon Fourie. Listen, this podcast has always been a back row appreciation society. So if you want to add another back row, you can.
I was actually going to add someone else, someone who isn't a back row or even a forward. Aaron Smith. I think it showed that he is arguably the best scrum half of the professional era or of this century. I know that's a very big call, and I'm sure a lot of people are very enthusiastic about their love of Dupont, which is completely correct. He is phenomenal as well. But
Fourie Dupré as well. Don't forget Fourie Dupré.
I mean, Mike Phillips, but
if we're going to say Mike Phillips now, we can't not say Conor.
You're opening up with a very broad definition of best nine ever.
But Aaron Smith for me, the new hipster opinion in rugby, which I normally don't like, but I am a fan of this one, is that Aaron Smith is a better scrum half than Antoine Dupont, and it's a bit like how Beauden Barrett is more. Stay calm, Caelan. Beauden Barrett is a more skilled player than Johnny Sexton, but Johnny Sexton is a better 10 than Beauden Barrett. I think Antoine Dupont is has a wider skill set than Aaron Smith, but Aaron Smith is a better scrum half. So I for me, and this was his last game. Was it his last game ever, or just his last test?
I think he might be.
I think it's his last test. He's going to Toyota or Blitz or whatever their name is.
Get that millions.
Yeah, okay. Get the money. He's phenomenal. Top passer in the game, which maybe isn't a surprise for a scrum half, but with 81 passes, and the next top All Black was obviously Mo'unga with 26. Just shows how much he was bossing the game, and he was in charge for that All Blacks performance. And I think they'll miss him a lot. And I think taking him off when they did, maybe they might look back on that as a mistake. They could have looked to keep him on for the 80, to be honest.
Yeah, that was something that we mentioned in the preview as well with I actually can't remember who mentioned in the preview. I think it could have been Jamie Wall or Harry Jones, one or the other. But it felt like it could have been a case that you keep him on, he dictates things, especially when, to no fault of his own, Richie Mwanga hasn't been in a game of this nature ever. Like last week was a cakewalk, and he did well against Ireland, to be fair. But they were always going to need Smith if they were going to win. And he grabbed the game, as you said. He was really, really good, really accurate. And especially when Mwanga had a shaky first 20 minutes. Like after that hit from Etzebeth, he didn't look himself. They needed Smith to step up, and he did. And another man who I'd throw in there, I'm surprised no one mentioned him, is Ardy Sevilla. Like, I mean, World Player of the Year candidate anyways, but he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. Hugh, you probably have a couple of stats to back it up, but I felt like if anyone was going to muscle it for New Zealand in the forwards, where we had question marks about them, it was going to be Sevilla, and he did for the most part.
Yeah.
Hugh, you want to jump in?
Yeah, top carrier in the game with 29.
29 carries.
Yeah.
Wow. That's even better than I thought.
Second on the list, probably someone who's gone underrated in the game as well. Mark Talea, 21 carries, kind of stepped in where Sam came off. He got talked about a lot in someone who was stepping up to be that extra forward at times. I don't know if I'd quite put it that way, and he got targeted as well with the crossfield kicks from the box a lot, and mostly got away with it. I don't think. Well, I mean, the box didn't score a try, so that tells you that they managed to contain it one way or another. But yes, Sevilla. So World Player of the Year has been, since it came in 2001, has been a World Cup winner every year apart from 2011, where it was Dusatois. I think Ardy Sevilla might be the second player to not win the final and still be Player of the Year. Just because even was going off
exists.
Yeah. I'd have to go Etzebeth.
If it wasn't a World Cup year, I would say Sevilla could walk it. But Etzebeth winning a World Cup and the way he's been playing this the knockouts, he carried us through these knockouts. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have beaten France. We wouldn't have beaten England. I think it has to be Etzebeth. But saying that, Ardy Sevilla, he always, when the rest of the New Zealand side looks to be at 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, he's still at 9. And that's when he really stands out. You can really see this man is an incredible rugby player. And it showed last night again, those ball carries of his where he's screaming with people hanging off of him, just using the power of rage to keep going through the tackle. It was evident again that he was trying to carry this team to victory on his back, which is something he did last year as well. And yeah, no, if it's not Etzebeth for me, yes, definitely Ardy Sevilla is Player of the Year.
Yeah, I personally, I thought Etzebeth benefited the knockouts that James Lowe wasn't there to carry him, but yeah, I did notice that.
Literally.
I did notice that about Sevilla, particularly as the end got up, and then it was matched in turn by the box, and I was really surprised that there wasn't a fist fight at certain points, because the ferocity not only of his carries but then their involvement with the ruck, I was like, the fact that that relative order is being maintained is incredible, because the absolute, like, vicious is too harsh word, but like just absolutely ferocious. It was more than a battle of bodies, it was a battle of wills, and it was just incredible to watch.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Just before we move off from this game, this incredible final, just want to touch on where you thought that, again, there's probably 100 different fine margins. You think of even the bounce that doesn't go into Sevilla's hands at the start of the game. But starting with yourself, Riaan, where do you think South Africa just got enough of an edge to, and I'll say it just to make you a little bit happier, to take home that 4th William Webb Ellis Cup?
I say it all the time. It's a hard one to say. I think it has to be discipline, general discipline from New Zealand. They have been carded in recent times, especially against us as well. I almost knew it in my gut that there was going to be a card that would cost New Zealand. I thought it would be Barrett Scott, because he has been a bit happy. I thought when I saw Frizzell fall on Bongi's knee, there's the red card that I thought would happen, but no, it was Sam Cane.
He had another
I think
bad
that
moment as well, not long after coming on, that could easily have been looked at and yellow carded if he wasn't already yellow carded.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought it would be. I don't see it as a ref thing. I see it as New Zealand putting themselves under pressure. They do something with too much fervor, or they're trying to impose themselves too much on the game, and they just get too far across the line of the law. And I knew if we put them under pressure, that would happen, and it did happen. So I think it was a discipline issue was what kept us in the game. I think we did give away more penalties than them, but they were less, telling in the long run. And we kicked ours; they didn't kick theirs.
It was 2-1 in the end. 5 penalties to 10, at least according to World Rugby. But
Wow. That it didn't feel like it was that lopsided. I suppose South Africa gave away a few near the end. It was mainly
when we were
a
under
clean,
pressure.
Yeah.
a clean game for the most part. And again, that's where you have to give credit to Wayne Barnes, that he kind of balanced things out quite well. He didn't go very whistle happy, which a lot of referees would in a game like last night.
Yeah.
How many games have we watched that there's not 30 points scored in, and it's just penalty after penalty after penalty?
Yeah.
And it wasn't. And that's good refereeing. That's experienced refereeing, to know that you can let a couple of extra things go even in a game like that. Do you want to jump in there, Hugh, about where you saw it being won and lost as well? Because discipline's a big factor, but there's probably a number of other things we could mention.
It was such a close game. Like I said, it's difficult to put your finger on one thing. Can I say Sia Khaleesi factor? Just something about the heart of South Africa. It's intangible. Here I am with my big page of stats, and I can't pick out one that says why it was one way or another. And I'm being like the whole passion merchant thing. But they're just with all the vibes and all the videos and things that the Box been putting out, and you could see like that video when Lekanyo came back into the camp and Sia greets him, or the videos of Sia leading them in singing a song or something. Felt like there was one of those every week, or him lifting up Jesse Creel in the air and that getting all the engagement that it did online. It's just something about the warmth and the love, which you could say is almost juxtaposed to the things that Rassie is willing to do and say in the name of winning, and then you've got this foil to him in his captain, who is all love and all heart. Just that seemed to just be the one difference that I could say between the Box and the All Blacks, is that the All Blacks just don't seem to have that side to them. And maybe that's their character. Maybe they're steely. Maybe they're the bad guys, and that's who they want to be. And that's fine. That's valid. But yeah, that's the intangible. I'm going to say Sia Khaleesi.
A good one. David, do you want to jump in now?
Yeah, well, I think it's something Riaan kind of touched on as well, is that, I said South Africa can win matches by scoring tries, or win matches by taking their points, and they seem to figure out what's necessary very quickly. So despite that stat about only getting 5 penalties to New Zealand's 10, they still scored, they still took them when they needed to. And I think, to be fair, you could say New Zealand's style is more to play for tries, but I just think the Box are able to very quickly analyze the game. And I don't know if they do it in pre-match analysis of themselves and the opposition, or if I would credit them with being able to figure it out on the fly, that they're just able to look at the game. Okay, this is what we need to do to win. This is what we need to do to make sure they don't get the chance to win, and then go forward from there.
No drop goals though. That's one thing that we weren't.
There was enough attempts, though.
Yeah, I think it was 4 from us.
I think everyone saw what Owen Farrell did and thought, "Oh yeah, come on, let's have a go."
They seen Johnny Wilkinson in the stand and thought, "Let's one up this guy," but not quite. I'm trying to think what other parts of it that you could kind of bring in. I do think discipline was huge, and I said it on the day, and someone did make a good point. This New Zealand team have a tendency to blow you out the water or try to F you up physically. And when they do it physically, they do toe the line in terms of discipline, because at the end of the day, they're not being punished for half of their season. They are at international level, kind of, but then there's the old New Zealand mystique. As someone then also said, they had 3 red cards up until 2017 in like the 70 years or 60 years before that. They've had one every year since. Like, discipline is, you can't afford to be that, not headless, because players this day and age aren't necessarily headless, but that loose in international rugby and not in a World Cup final. But I think if I was to nail down something, I think just South Africa's, we spoke about just knowing how to grind it out, knowing how to get the job done. But you also have a South African team who have enough warriors and enough of the old dog for the long road kind of about them, that when it gets tough, you have someone like Quadra Smith. Listen, it was probably a hands in the ruck penalty that probably should have been given, but that's a different conversation. But lads like that, even coming off the bench, lads like Sneeman did really well off the bench. Dion Ferry, as we mentioned, bringing on LaRue to help see things out, and then experienced starters. Experience wins more test games, and this ability to play cup rugby wins more test games than anything else. We've said it for the entirety of this tournament, and that's what South Africa do better than anyone else. Hugh, you want to jump in?
Well, I just in the background, I googled the 2019 team that won the game, and you're on directly to your point there, the team knowing how to win. So that 2019 starting team, obviously Beast wasn't there, but you got Umbanambi, Malherbe, Etzebeth. It was the exact same back row, exact same halfback pairing. Colby was there, Diolende was there, so same 9, 10, 12. Am wasn't obviously there, and Mapimpi wasn't there, and LaRue was on the bench. And then Kitsoff and Snyman were on the bench as well. So the way they've managed to keep that team together, and it's basically the 75% of the team that won the last World Cup. Whereas I think on the All Blacks side, Bodie was obviously there when they won the last one. Aaron Smith would have been there.
Whitelock.
I'm kind of Whitelock and Retallick. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that Dane Coles wasn't involved. I have to say, maybe that was a mistake because his experience in that game might have told.
That was one that was flagged as well before the game, that especially for New Zealand, we did feel like if it was tight going down the stretch, if they were bringing on Finlay Christie, if they're bringing on Takiaho, like granted Christie versus Roygaard, not exactly both very experienced, but even Mackenzie going to 10, they didn't have the same level of experience as a South African team who, I'll hold my hand up, I thought maybe they had gone past their window to win a second World Cup, but maybe they'd just gone 1 year too far. But obviously, I got that one incredibly wrong. But to be fair,
Mike Brown actually said once, sorry to fall in here, Mike Brown, English fullback, he said, I think they were playing, it was during a Six Nations window, and the Harlequins were fielding like a team of 34, 35, 32, 36-year-olds in their back line. And he said, people forget that sports science has moved on since 2003. Players of 31 and 32 years old are no longer the creaking bones, arthritis-ridden old men from the 90s. A 31, 32, 33-year-old these days is equally as good as a 28, 26-year-old is. And South Africa is anything if not into our sports science. We've got massive things in Stellenbosch that are dedicated to keeping rugby players going for as long as possible. I mean, Siya Kolisi came back after a meniscus tear. I mean, it's legendary now, 4 months or something, and he was back. So, yeah, we shouldn't discount that. Yes, we've got a bunch of 30-year-olds in the squad, but they are not the 30-year-olds from the 1990s. These are now much better prepared athletes. So I've always thought with that team, we have a chance. I'm actually surprised the English team wasn't as good as well. They were also in that final and they were younger. So, yeah.
I could give you a few reasons. I think you could give you a couple of reasons, and I give you a couple of reasons that are more, dare I say, narrative-driven analysis. But listen, that's
but just... if you're going by results, they're one penalty kick away from taking South Africa's place in that final.
2 minutes.
So it is, and look, I don't think anyone would argue that the two teams are on the same level, but you got to give credit where it's due. That was the team that I have no expectations of going into the tournament, and they ultimately ended up going out kind of where you'd expect them to. But there were a few old heads in there. You got people like Ben Youngs. You've got Owen Farrell's not as old, but he's still at the upper end, and they.
Doge was in that final.
Yeah,
Pola was in that final. Curry, all those guys.
Yeah,
But then at the same
they
time,
probably gave them a much better accounting of themselves than I would have expected them to,
Yeah.
even if the
They
end
did.
result was the same. That
yeah, and you and I, David, were on the call after the Ireland-England game, and it was pretty bleak thinking of England at the time because Ireland they weren't even in third gear, and they bet them out the gate, and Wales only got to third gear, beat them in Millennium Stadium, and so on, but they got the job done on their route. Someone did put up a stat though, and I think this is where it's telling is, England didn't beat a single team in the top six. Scotland didn't beat a single team in the top six. New Zealand won 1 out of 3 games against teams in the top 6 in the world. And those little things do add up because it just shows that realistically, if we're being entirely honest here, South Africa, Ireland, France, it was always going to be 1-score games. And I think New Zealand had to hit this incredible marker to take down Ireland. They were going to have to. Okay, they didn't have to hit the same heights if they're to beat South Africa, but they probably would have had to do it to beat France. The familiarity factor helped them against South Africa. There just wasn't a lot in it. And yeah, South Africa deserved champions, but not a lot between any of these teams.
Yeah.
Will we move on to the tournament then? I think this is a good place to leave it. Riaan, we can talk about the final all night if you want, but
I'll talk about it later in the week. You'll see.
Oh yes, that'll be enjoyable. People, subscribe to Riaan on YouTube if you're not already. But if you're at all leaning towards supporting South Africa, I think you'll enjoy what he has in store. So it's been. Listen, there'd always be people who knock it, but I thought it was a very good Rugby World Cup as a tournament. I think it was the best tournament of my lifetime, in my own opinion. In terms of the rugby on display, the shock results, the moments. So we might just break it down in a couple of ways, and I'll start with David, and we'll just go around the room. We'll start with the game of the tournament because there is probably 7 good choices.
How do we choose?
Here. Out of 48 games, I think 1 in every 3 or 4 was a classic. So I'll let you go first.
God, it's an incredibly difficult one to make, and like we've done the short list, and they were the predictable games between the 4 heavy hitters: France, South Africa, Ireland, and New Zealand. You'd have to admit, going back to look at it in hindsight, that New Zealand against Ireland in the quarterfinal was spectacular. Obviously, really enjoyed Ireland v South Africa in the pools as just a test case from both teams. But you know what? I'll just swing from the fences and go back to first principles. I thought Portugal's win was brilliant. I thought they played phenomenal rugby for a team that I think most of their players aren't even professional. And to see not only their performance in that, backed up by their draw and their almost win against Georgia the previous week, I just thought that's what you want to see at a World Cup. And I think that's, as much as the record set in the final and the big wins on the big days, it's days like that are going to help to grow what is, in a lot of the world, definitely not a first place sport in people's minds. So I just thought that was a phenomenal performance from a hell of a team that I hope we see a lot more of in the next few years.
I think I have the solution for you. We should create a world league that only a handful of teams play in with no promotion relegation. That'll definitely tick
Portugal
that box.
would be so happy to play against other teams in 2031. It'll be amazing.
And like a player like Nelson Martins, who was one of the best players of the tournament, like what's he, 23 now? He'd be 31 then. Like this is when you put it in the context of that.
While the iron is hot.
Or wait until the iron is lost and you have to go buy a new one before you go and change anything. Riaan, you've spoken about in your YouTube videos and on this podcast about the different games, but maybe away from the final, just for obvious reasons. What was your game of the tournament?
I hate wet weather rugby, so the final and the semi-final will never be my favorite game. I do not like them. I like winning them. It's a very tough choice for me. The Ireland South Africa in the pool stage was incredible. The Ireland New Zealand game was also just as good, but because the Ireland South Africa game had no real bearing on how our tournament would go. It's nice to win all your pool games, but it doesn't really matter that much. The New Zealand Ireland game was brilliant because I had no personal stake in it. It was just pure entertainment. It was like one of the best films you ever see or something. But for me, I think it has to be France, South Africa, because I had that personal involvement in it. It was still dry weather. I mean, it was raining tries for those first 20 minutes. I didn't know which way was up. Just seeing France do their incredible up the middle attack and then go wide to score, and then we hadn't shown that before, the crossfield bomb to Peter Steff or Eben standing on the wing. I haven't seen us do that before, and it being so effective 3 times in a row, and then being behind, coming back from behind and winning. For me, it was France, South Africa. That was an incredible game.
I think there's a couple of games that live in the memory, and I think that's definitely one of them. Hugh, where would you like to go with your game of the tournament?
Well,
Was
with
Wales
my
involved?
with my Wales hat on, which I actually have here,
Quite literally a Wales hat.
quite literally. I'm going Wales Fiji on the first weekend. The drama that was through that game, because it wasn't maybe the highest quality game. Well, it obviously wasn't as high quality as the quarterfinals between those 4 teams, but that kind of added to it as well, because you had the moments of someone making a mistake and it really having consequences, and you got your head in your hands. You go, oh, what is he doing? Obviously, the way it ended with Radradra dropping the ball in such a painful way, such a legend of the game, could have really made a historic moment in Fijian rugby and maybe world rugby then, and just it literally slipped through his fingers, and that's something that I'll always remember. And Wales did play great rugby. You got the shot from Josh Adams on Ravitamada as well, which was epic. And it was a game that had consequence, because if Wales had lost that game, psychologically we're in a completely different place for the rest of that pool, and I don't know whether we top it. Whereas win that game, you could see in the players that was like all looking at each other going, okay, we can do it. We are a decent rugby team. And I think even Fiji could take a lot of heart from it. Of, they scored 4 tries in that game. It was 4 tries each. And it just came down to the place kicking, really. And like I said, the last moment of the game. So with my incredibly biased hat on, which I've taken off because it's too small, I'm going Wales Fiji.
Can't argue with any of those. I should probably throw in, unlike Riaan, I do like wet weather rugby. Maybe it's the Munster fan in me. I enjoyed. I know it wasn't raining for Ireland, South Africa, but it was played like a tight game. I enjoyed the final last night. I thought it was a fantastic final. I really enjoyed France against New Zealand on the opening night, but I feel like Ireland, New Zealand is the one I should say if I'm going to go Ireland. But I have to say Ireland, South Africa, because listen, we all remember our wins. We'll remember this loss. Don't get me wrong, but I have to remember the good days as well. That was remarkable. And then as well as that, Portugal against Fiji is up there. Fiji, Wales, as you said, Fiji beating Australia. All these, they're all incredible. Pool C was the pool to make us feel pure. I think it was. And then the rest was more for rugby.
It shows what rugby could be if the field was more level, the playing field was more level,
And Pool D was, if I could turn back time, this is the rugby we'd be playing. Apart from Japan. That reminds me, that's going to be my try of the tournament. I'll get an unsung hero from you next. I'll start with yourself, Riaan. It could be player, team, coach, whatever.
I think maybe he's not as unsung. In my country, he would be Nicolas Martins from Portugal. They're 7, their back rower. Being a Lions fan from South Africa, we had this player called Warren Whiteley. I don't know if you guys ever watched much Super Rugby. When we went to the final 3 times in a row, it was on his back of 20 tackles a game, massive chase down tackles, beautiful hands, and he was one of the last passes that sent Yanti over when we beat New Zealand in 2018 in New Zealand. Now, Nicolas Martins is Warren Whiteley, reborn in Portugal. That man is an incredible rugby player. When I saw him the first time playing for Portugal, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He did not miss a tackle. I think there was one game he made 35 tackles. He attempted 35. I think he made 30 1 or something like that. He's an incredible player. I hope to see much more of him in the future.
Absolutely. David, who's your unsung hero?
Unsung is a hard one to do while also being a hero, particularly with a tournament that was this had this much attention on it. I go to one maybe that I, in my own ignorance, was not aware of, that I should have been much more aware of. I'll give an honorable shout out to George Ford. I thought he's been let down a lot more by England than he should have been. He's, if you want to talk about a player dropped for the next shiny thing, that's not to do down Marcus Smith, good player, but George Ford.
Oh no, we understand where you stand. That's absolutely fine. I'm sending this on to the Quins fanboys who come after me about the Joe Marler comments.
You just want them to go after me for a change. I thought George Ford, particularly with that opening game against Argentina, because I think a lot of us thought going into that, okay, this is England, they're going to suddenly fall apart here. And George Ford just stepped up and went, hey, you remember drop goals? Let's make that a thing again. And I thought he was phenomenal. But from my perspective, a player that I didn't really know as much about, possibly because I don't watch as much rugby championship, I really thought for South Africa that a massive difference maker, and defense never gets as much attention as attack, despite how incredibly important it is. I thought Jesse Creel was just phenomenal the whole way through the tournament. I really remember him from the Ireland game.
I'm so glad he's getting love finally, that man.
He single-handedly stopped 2 tries. Now, one of them we ended up going over in the corner with Mac, but like Johnny Sexton's almost over the posts, and suddenly having, I think, initially missed the tackle and gone for someone else, he just finds a way to get back and scrag him and bring him down. He stopped Hugo Keenan getting across the line earlier in the match. And then to keep a player like, now I know he only joined the squad later, but to keep a player like Lucanio Am out of the 13 shirt, it's just nothing short of incredible. So I thought for a team that, if you're going to win a tournament like this, the points you don't concede are as important as the points you do concede. And I thought Creel was just incredible, and definitely deserves to be up there with the greats in this team.
And if I was going to say South Africa and defense, Quadra Smith is probably another that would jump in there. Like a lot of people, and myself to a small degree, I did rate him as a player, but a lot of people did say, oh, that's a sign the bomb squad isn't what it was because Quadra Smith is the replacement back row. But again, just tackled everything, did his job effectively well, and that's what you want to see. Who's next? David, you want to go there?
Just because you mentioned Quagga, I said I was out with some friends watching that game, and I'm pretty sure it was him. There was a tackle on, would have been New Zealand's left wing. Someone else tackled the New Zealand player, and Smith.
Well, Jordan went helicopter,
and then suddenly Quagga Smith has the ball in his. He took it as Will Jordan's being lifted up. Quagga Smith just goes, "I'll take the ball there," and for a game that had a lot of reactions, and like I said, there were a lot of South African fans in the bar. There were Irish fans, there were fans from all over the place. It's just everybody around who's going, I've never seen that happen before. That's incredible. He literally just went, I'll take that, thanks, and then off he went. It was incredible. So yeah.
The only thing I could ever compare it to was, and I thought about this last night, was in 2008 Munster played Gloucester and Rua Tupuoke hit one of the Gloucester midfielders, but he hit him so hard and square that when they hit the ground, Tupuoke somehow had the ball. I don't know how it happened. No one, you never got a proper angle, but it's the only thing I compare it to. Where you, like, I know Smith was more of a, yeah, I'll have that, thanks. But if
you watch a bit more rugby championship, you'll see he does one of those a game almost. It's a specialty of his. He rips the ball at least once a game. There's like 4 guys and then he comes out with the ball somehow. I don't know how he does it. It's one of his things.
It's not quite the same, but you talk about helicopter. There was an under-20s game between Wales and England, and it was Harrison Keddy who now plays for the Dragons against Matt Prothero, who ironically now plays for the Ospreys. And Harrison Keddy picked, the size difference was ridiculous. Like Matt Prothero is like 9 stone or whatever it is, and Harrison Keddy is obviously a big back row. Harrison Keddy picked him up one arm, one leg, and threw him like a frisbee across the rugby pitch. So. And he only got a yellow card for it, so like fair play. But that's for unsung heroes. I kind of feel like people in Pool C, like Portuguese players and things, did get a lot of singing. So I'm trying to pick the most obscure person I can think of, and I'm going to go for Matsuda, who was the 10 for Japan. because in this World Cup, we have seen what a difference a number 10 who can kick their goals makes. And for Japan to even be within a shout of getting out of their pool, going into the last half of the last game against Argentina, is almost entirely because of Matsuda and his goal kicking and his ability to keep his side in games. You also saw a similar thing with William Havili, with Tonga as well. Kind of, although Tonga got some big score lines put on them, they kind of were more in it than they deserved to be in a lot of games because of Havili
like
as
the
well.
Ireland game, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely. And Havili had been playing fullback all year for Mono Pacifica and came in and did a great job at 10 for Tonga. So I'm going Matsuda just as someone who, in terms of percentage difference they made for their team, probably changed their fortunes on his own.
Yeah,
That game
that's a good
between
one.
Japan and Argentina actually could also be one of the games of the tournament. You know, that was a brilliant match.
Yeah, it was brilliant for reasons that we wouldn't attribute to Ireland, New Zealand, or France, South Africa, because it was just wide open and harem scaring,
Yeah,
but it was
just so much
very
fun.
enjoyable.
Yeah.
Hugh, have you a favorite moment from the tournament?
It's so hard to pick. Yes, Willemse calling the scrum on the mark.
Yes.
Changed rugby. Now every time I see a player call the mark and he doesn't opt for a scrum, I'm like, coward.
If they score a try from the mark, like go down the field and score.
Yeah.
That has changed rugby. Now the way I watch it is if a player takes a mark, I immediately look at the situation of the game and like, okay, what makes sense to do here? Does it make sense to call a set piece? Does it make sense to kick it out? We didn't call the scrums last night because guess what? If you come up against good props, you do not incentivize us to scrum for penalties. So how do you fix the incentive to scrum for penalties? Get better props, Mr. Williams of Scotland / Australia.
I was just about to say, I can't believe Hugh picked such an immoral favorite moment, but I think really you've kind of beaten me to that punch. David, have you a favorite moment from the tournament?
Yeah, and I'm going to say it very quickly because my computer might be about to shut itself down. But and this is completely personal, and I recognize it's very, very green-eyed, but hell, I was there, so it meant a lot to me. I think a lot of people a lot of people in Ireland, recognizing the contributions of the man, would have liked to see Johnny Sexton go out on the highest of highs. And I was lucky enough to be in Nantes when he scored his try against Tonga, and I was right behind the goal. And he scored that try to break the record, and to just see a guy who's played so much of his rugby career almost like he was a little bit angry. He was just ecstatic. Like it was the kind of happiness that you love to see in players, and to see it in someone who hasn't, I think, always been able to enjoy it as much as he should, despite how accomplished he is. It was just really nice to see that he recognized in that moment, this is a great place to be. I'm really lucky to be here, and I'm really happy to be here. So that was my favorite moment.
Ireland had a few, to be fair. You could go on about Zombie, which was stolen by Ireland from Munster, now stolen from Ireland and Munster by South Africa to sing about. It is, to be fair, like it is a bit of fun. That's what sport is about in its own way. Riaan, I'll let you say winning the World Cup is your favorite moment, but have you favorite moments?
Well, Hugh did mention Siya Kolisi. Anytime that guy was behind the mic was a favorite moment for me. Today, was it today or maybe it was yesterday? He was interviewed by someone and asked why he plays and stuff. And he said, people have died to give me the freedom to play this game. And it would be, dishonoring their memory if we didn't give everything we could to show people that they can play this game as well, if they put the work in like we do. And that line was just like, yes, there is everything I want new, modern, post-Rassie South African rugby to be. Before Rassie was stodgy, was old white men sitting in brown brutalist buildings in control. No, rugby is for this group of people in this country. Post-Rassie with Kolisi, the face of rugby in this country is so different. The party last night would not have been half the size it was if it was still the previous type of rugby culture in our country. And I think that's Sia. And every time he speaks, the whole country there's more fans of the game. So for me, it was him.
Yeah, I mean, every time Sia Khaleesi speaks, you find it hard not to be blown away. Like even his interview, like, of all the interviews he did, the one he did with S4C last night, where he goes and he mentions Wales will be fine. They're going to be led by Jack Morgan, and it's going to be them in 4 years' time who are going to be one of the teams to beat. And it's like, I love Johnny and Peter Mahoney, and most international captains are graceful, but very few would make that comment in victory or in defeat. And to know
the
your
first thing he
surroundings.
said after the game when they interviewed him on the world feed, when they interviewed him and they asked, Sia, how do you feel? How's it to win? And the first thing he says, first, I want to give credit to New Zealand. Those were the first words out of his mouth. There's very few captains that
but
would
at least
do that.
they put up a proper fight unlike 4 years ago. Yeah. But listen, that's me going a bit too far. David appears to have dropped off, not off the face of the earth, and not by the Quins fans for coming after Marcus Smith. I believe it's just a tech issue. Yeah, they were coming for me, but Dublin was way easier to find. To be fair, I'll start off the try of the tournament. I'm going to go with Vakatava against Argentina because I'm someone who loves a good front, a good forward kicking the ball. But to do a chip and chase and to beat, I don't know who the covering defender was to the corner, and to race in from 50 yards is just... Listen, forwards are athletes too. And that just reminded us that they're every bit of an athlete. And it was amazing. If I was being selfish, there's probably one or two Irish ones, maybe the ones against Scotland.
Ireland, if there's one thing Ireland does is they score beautiful tries. That's for sure. Yeah.
They do. Probably Crowley teeing up Ringrose against Scotland, kind of because it was Scotland, kind of because it was Crowley, mainly because it was Scotland. So that'll be right up there. That was something that was in my head last night. I don't know if I said it to you, Hugh, that no wonder New Zealand lost. They had a Scotsman on the bench, But...
No, you didn't send that one to me, no.
Oh, okay.
Don't drag me into this.
I sent you someone. That's the question is who. Riaan, we'll get your try at the tournament.
I know you're gonna love this. I know what game it was and what country scored it. I cannot for the life of me remember exactly what it looked like, but Scotland scored against Ireland, a worldie of a try from their own 22.
God, who was it? That Horn?
I think so. I think the 9 went under the post right at the end of the move or something like that. I'll have to go watch it again, but that one, just to stick it into you, Cullen, just so you know they can do. But for me, I think it is biased, but the pure determination of the South African team to get Eben Etzebeth over the line so we could get into the lead against France, because we were dead and buried. He was off the field. He came back on, and you could see they called a system. This is what we're going to do, and we are going to get over the try line. And it was just work. Maybe not the most beautiful move in the world, but pure determination and grit, as you call it, to get over that line. So for me, it's a bit saving our World Cup against France.
That was pure brute force at its finest. Hugh, have you a favorite try or try of the tournament?
It might have been. It might have been, and I can't remember exactly who scored it again, but the one France against Namibia, the one where the French were doing all of the 1-2s and the between the three of them and back again with the basketball passes. Yes, you have to take the opposition into account, but that was just look how good we are type rugby, and it was incredible to watch. Well, I'm actually going to go for Pat Pellegrini's try for Tonga against South Africa, just because that was typical of what we were kind of talking about. Tonga had no rights to be giving the Boks that much of a game, really. And obviously you got this guy who plays for Coventry in the English Championship, wasn't even in the original squad, got called in and does the chip and chase. And it's one of those, like, you were like watching it going, no, he's not, surely not. It's going to go wrong any second now. And when he chipped it and then it bounced back into his hands. And he went over and like, oh my God, this has happened. And I think the commentator on ITV knew him or knew of him and was like, a Coventry player has just scored for Tonga in the World Cup. So that's my favourite try, just for this sheer shock and delight of it.
That's a good one as well. David, can you hear us? Can you give us a try of the tournament if you're?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. I was very quickly looking back over it because it was a great World Cup for tries, but there was one try both for the actual try itself, which was a really nice piece of play, but for what it meant in the context and the moment it kind of was in the match, I'd have to go with I think it was Nicolas Freitas's try against France for Uruguay, because I think it was the 5th or 6th minute of that game. Plays in France's half, and I think Echeverry is the Uruguayan out half, just delivers this lovely little crossfield kick, hops just in front of Freitas. He boots it ahead of himself to get around the last French defender, picks it up and dots it down, and suddenly Uruguay, this, I think, a lot of people's favorite team, but not a team you'd ever expect to be humbling one of the great powers of rugby, are suddenly leading France, one of the tournament favorites in the World Cup. And I just thought that is a brilliant moment. And it went on to be a brilliant game. And I think the impetus of that try is probably what helped Uruguay to really scare the hell out of France.
Yeah, so I can't disagree with that one at all, to be honest. Player of the tournament, I feel like we should do a short list of some sort. I don't know how, because kind of like last night, there's a few to choose from. Probably go Etzebeth for South Africa. If we go one per country, Etzebeth for South Africa, New Zealand, Sevilla, obviously.
Well, I can't believe that Will Jordan hasn't been nominated for World Player of the Year.
I can. No, I really can't either, to be honest. The fact that it's only a 4-man list is kind of what's wrong with
It's
it
a
as
very
well.
short one. Wasn't it like
Yeah.
6 people last year?
In a World Cup year, only the World Cup performance matters as well. It doesn't matter that what some players might have done for their clubs in Europe or what Jordan did for the Crusaders and things. It's clearly all just on who was the best player at the World Cup.
And like that came back against a couple of people in years gone by. I think they've changed it slightly since, but I remember Conor Murray in 2017 was unplayable. It could have been 16, could have been 17. He was unplayable. He was Ireland's best player. He was Munster's best player. He was unreal. Didn't even get nominated because he missed a couple of Ireland games. So they kind of felt like, he hasn't played enough, despite the fact that every time he was on the pitch, he was a man of the match contender. And there is these flaws with this system. Only having 4 players on a World Cup year, where the champion could probably have 2 or 3. France could have 2 or 3. Ireland could have 2 or 3. New Zealand could have had 2. Heck, even England or Scotland could have had 1 if you really wanted to. If you wanted to support the tier 2 nations. So, like I feel like Etzebeth, Sevilla for the 2 finalists. I don't know who you put in for England, because I feel like it's just Ford or Farrell as like a joint effort.
Ben Earl.
Courtney Laws.
Ben Earl, actually, yeah.
Courtney
Earl
Laws.
or Laws.
For me, it's Laws.
Argentina.
Earl was a funny as well, who went from a player who was like a kind of a symbol of ridicule for his cheering, crooked lineouts, to then being like, oh no, this guy is actually pretty good at rugby. So yeah, that was a nice little redemption arc for him.
Nice little, redemption is the word. Argentina, Carreras, probably.
He's good, yeah. Carreras.
The winger, the Mateo.
Yeah, Mateo. I couldn't think of which one was which, to be honest. That's why I just saw he jump in. Ireland, Bundiaki.
Yeah, definitely.
That's obvious. Botia for Fiji. Wales, Jack Morgan.
Levu as well. Probably Wales, Jack Morgan, or Will Rowlands is another one. I think he's established himself as a world-class lock now. But yeah, I'd probably go Jack Morgan.
Aldrit or Olivon for France?
Aldrit for me.
Aldrit.
Yeah.
I had this discussion during the week with someone about a team in the tournament. I feel like Olivon and Aldrit, if they've had more than 2 meaningful games, will probably walk in. But when they only
and
did play
as well, the hooker, brilliant,
that's true, actually.
Brilliant as well. Yeah.
Well, it's stacked for sevens though, because you got Olivon, Bottier, Martins, and then obviously Khaleesi as well. It's the
Benner.
7 is like, no, Benno was playing an 8, even though he is a 7.
Yeah.
In South
That's why I
Africa,
mentioned-
Khaleesi is playing 6. We swapped the number around.
Open side then. Open side. So open side is like one of the most talented positions on a rugby pitch.
I think actually for its scarcity, that's why I would pick or Peter Steph out of those two teams, because of it's such a rare, a scarce position to fill, is that proper blindside flanker, bruiser type of player. But Martins for Portugal. Who else is there? Italy. Did they have any standouts?
Don't
They
think
messed
so.
with the
I feel like
selection too
anyone who
much.
went out in the pool stages, it's hard to
Yeah.
put them through.
I mean, Angus Bell is
Unless you
pretty
went
much
for, say,
Australia's only good
Portugal or
player.
Uruguay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Angus Bell. Storty of Portugal, maybe. But I would take
Storty or Martins.
Martins.
Fritz
over
Lee
Storty.
from Samoa as well, another open side. Actually plays
McFarland.
number 8 for his club.
McFarlane. Theo
McFarlane.
McFarlane. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my. I
Tamifuna.
nearly. Tamifuna. Yes.
Yeah.
I know this
he
isn't.
he was huge. Like not just in terms of how big the actual guy is, but like for a guy who just looks like he's going to be a massive bruiser for a prop, he's actually like a really good carrier as well. Like he can make meters when he needs to. So he's phenomenal.
So who will we give the award to? I'll go with yourself first. Who was your player of the tournament from that long list?
God, that is a long list. Christ. Gosh, I don't know. You feel like you have to give it to someone from the winning team. I'd say in terms of their impact on the overall game, you probably have to give it to either Steph Toy or Khaleesi. I think they were both just phenomenal. I think my heart of hearts, I want to give it to Bundy, and I think if we'd gotten that far, just for how much the man has brought his game up, and touch it back actually on what Riaan said, a 33-year-old who's definitely putting manners on a lot of lads in their 20s. But I'll probably go with Steph Toy.
Hugh, which way are you going?
I've got no idea. I'm trying to think of who is miles ahead of anyone else in their position, and I can't really think of anybody. So I'm going to go with who I said was the first name out of my mouth is Will Jordan, because he's the top try scorer at the tournament. That's my cop-out answer.
Stop. You can't.
Only 8.
I'm
Didn't
sorry.
break the
You
record.
can't. He didn't break the record. He had a poor final, and he scored how many of his tries against very poor teams? Like I'm not discrediting that. He's one of the best wingers in the world, but I can't. I don't know if I can even accept that answer, to be honest with you.
I think he'll be unfairly judged by how poor his final was, because he is a very good player. Yeah.
But still, though, like he was good. He scored a brilliant try against Ireland. I'm not trying to change history here, but like he wasn't great against France the first night. Was good against Ireland. Like he played well, but like I wouldn't have him in the conversation. I don't think he's New Zealand's best player. I don't think he's New Zealand's second best player. So,
but this is my point. I can't think of someone who is miles ahead of anyone else in their position.
Undiaki?
Etzebeth. What lock is as good as Etzebeth on this planet right now?
Tyburn.
Tyburn is a blind side. You play him in the wrong position.
Would you complain about? And if you were saying that Peter Steph Toy Khaleesi is miles better, and I said Tyburn, you'd say he's a lock. So I can't accept that either.
No, I would. I really rate Tyburn as a back rower, not as a lock. No, for me it's a bit. He has gone in our country. We ranked all our best Springboks ever last year. We did a whole vote thing, and number 1 Springbok ever was Fourie du Preez, and then in the top 10, I think 9th was Etzebeth. I think he might be going up to number 2, 3, 1 now. It was du Preez, US, and then someone else. I think now it might be du Preez, US, Etzebeth between them. But Etzebeth, double World Cup winner, changed his game to become a kick chaser recently. Just tackles anything, doesn't get tired, and that guy now I think is for South Africa one of our best Springboks ever. And for me, player of the tournament, easy. Easy.
Yeah, that's a good note to leave it on. It's an Etzebeth's appreciation couple of minutes, because he has been instrumental in South Africa, and at the end of the day, South Africa are champions. Winners write history. So Riaan will let that be the final moment of an incredible couple of weeks, because it has been amazing. It has been a great tournament. There's no doubt about that. And thank you so much to Hugh, to Riaan, to David for joining me tonight, and to everyone all the way back to August. I make it about 43 guests in about 40 podcasts, give or take. That's a rough estimate of where I'm going. To everyone, it has been an absolute pleasure. To everyone who was listening, almost 10,000 listeners across the last couple of months. It has been brilliant. A lot more on YouTube, not always positive. That's why podcasts are a little bit better than YouTube. But it has been an absolute privilege to talk about this World Cup, one of the great World Cups. I think it'll live long in the memory for South Africa, for France, for Ireland. In some ways, it's been great. I'll be back with URC talk and with Munster talk. But I will be taking a mini break eventually, because it's been a lot of rugby. It's been a lot of rugby.
You've done a lot. I
Yeah.
can't believe you've managed all of this.
I
Good
can't
going.
believe I've
Incredible.
managed all this. I won't lie. I started a new job halfway through, and I thought, this is it. This is the end. And I was like, no, I'll squeeze it out. Just about got there. But that's what matters. Just about got there, like South Africa did. And as always, thanks to everyone at home for listening. If you like what you see or hear, please do subscribe. You'll have the links for my channels as well as the lads' Twitter pages. I should always say, go follow these lads. Hugh has just broken the 1,000 mark. Riaan,
Did you make it? Good.
I think he did.
I did, yeah. Big up, Jared Wright shared it straight away, and it was pretty much within 20 minutes of him sharing it, it broke it.
The South African support is always huge. Riaan over on YouTube, if you want funny, well written out, well scripted rugby videos that unfortunately are not allowed to have actual rugby in them, but that's another day's conversation.
Maybe now.
Even at that, listen, rugby is a very fickle sport when it comes to these things. They don't want anyone to do anything about it. But listen, maybe we're just breaking down barriers. Maybe that's all it is. Do recommend you follow them, and to David as well, who's been on so often. Not as much rugby content on his Twitter page.
I'm just a token Leinster supporter invited along to make up the numbers.
I don't think Token and Leinster has ever been in the same sentence.
I mean, they are in a Nino, but can't go there soon enough. What are they? 3 from 7 or something? Poor guys.
It's going to be at least a week before he arrives in Dublin, because I hear
Oh,
they're doing a
they've
proper set.
already been tweeting claiming him and C Point RFC's own Felix Jones. So
That this means I have to end it this way. To Jean Klein, to Jorge Sneeman, to Felix Jones.
There we
and
go.
Less so to Jacques and Razzie. Congratulations, South Africa, worthy champions. Everyone at home, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the journey of this tournament. Until next time, take it easy.